You may have heard that the UK has a new government following its most recent election. One of the stories that stood out from the couple of days that followed the result, while the new Prime Minister was appointing his team, was that an entrepreneur and business leader was named as a government minister. Unusually, this appointment was almost universally praised, including by some of the politicians on the opposing side. Even more unusual, it wasn't a minister for business and industry, it was the Minister for Prisons, an area widely acknowledged to be in crisis in the UK. In fact, British jails are so full, it is said that within days or weeks of the election, there will be no space left for newly sentenced prisoners. And one of the reasons is that crime is a real problem in the country. And when people are released from prison, 75% of them reoffend within 9 years of a release, nearly 40% of them within the first year. So the new minister has a lively inbox. That new minister is James Thompson, who has run the Timpson Group since 2002, when he took the business over from his father, Sir John Timpson, CBE. If you're in the UK, you'll know Timpson. You'll have seen their stores in town centres, often with little units in or near supermarkets or train stations. The company repairs shoes and it cuts keys. In addition, it engraves, it repairs watches and mobile phones, as well as doing dry cleaning and photo processing. After James became CEO, he did some of the sorts of things you would expect, expanding the business to over 2,100 shops, but he also did at least one thing you probably wouldn't expect. He made a major commitment to hire a significant proportion of his staff from ex-offenders. This came after he befriended a man called Matt when he was on an organised visit to prison in Manchester. Why would a business leader be visiting a prison, you might ask? Well, there were a number of these schemes. I actually visited a prison in Leeds, along with various people from business, local government and civil society, organised around the same time as Timpson by an organisation called Common Purpose. It was part of a programme to get leaders from various sectors to understand how various bits of the local area worked, the economy, crime, infrastructure and so on. So I'm expecting it was something similar for James Thompson. Anyway, he took a shine to one of the inmates he got to speak to, and he decided to hire him to work in the company after his release. And it turned out to be a very successful hire. So now Timpson makes a point of hiring around 10% of its total workforce from ex-offenders, which at this point means as many as 600 people in the company countrywide. Timpson found that ex-offenders often made loyal and hard-working staff. They appreciated, after all, that someone had given them a chance, and this was relatively rare, so they decided they should probably make the most of it. He also found from his experience of visiting prisons and seeking people to recruit from that many of the people he met really didn't seem to him to merit being incarcerated at all. This led him to state at one point that the UK is addicted to sentencing and that a third of the people currently in jail are there unnecessarily. That would be, you would imagine, a rather important observation if the prison service is currently full to overflowing. The thing is, it's a difficult problem to address. The 14 years of Conservative government has seen no fewer than 14 ministers of prison, so a new one every year. They didn't want to let people out. That would be bad for their credentials of being tough on crime. They didn't want to build new prisons, which were a hugely expensive development that would immediately then be compared with the need to build new hospitals. So the can was kicked down the road, and the job changed hands very quickly. Arguably, Timpson has done more already than any of those former ministers. As well as employing ex-offenders, he served for 7 years as the chair of Prison Reform Trust charity and promoted the creation of job hubs inside jails to connect potential employers with inmates prior to their release. These have helped to increase the numbers of inmates getting jobs within 6 months of release from 14 to 30%. The fact is, it's been known for decades that having a job is one of the biggest factors in reducing the reoffending rate. One program that trained inmates to become forklift truck drivers saw reoffending rates drop to around 6% to those that took part. These are real people with real lives. Take, for instance, Sarah Barker, a young woman who had a pretty rough early start to life. Her mother had died when she was 15. When she was put into care, she suffered badly from depression. Then she was attacked by a man and she stabbed him. The circumstances were such that she was sentenced to 5 years in prison for assault. While she was there, a representative from Timpson made a recruiting visit to her prison, and she jumped at the chance to apply for the post. While under release on licence, she worked at the company's store in Wythenshawe, and her story really outlined just how big a deal the help could be. She told the Manchester Evening News this: "When I was released from prison, I had no family to help me and not very many friends. I was so glad to be released, but it felt like such a daunting prospect. I didn't know where to start. I had nowhere to live and no one to turn to. My store manager let me live with her until I was able to transfer to a shop in Bury where I knew a friend lived." That's already a pretty big helping hand from that manager. And it wasn't all plain sailing. At one point she had to take time off because of post-traumatic stress disorder over her attack. But she said of Timpson, "They were really patient and understanding and let me return to work in a less stressful position. I've been with them since 2010 and am so grateful for the support they've given me. They really helped me turn my life around and I'm supporting myself now." So, when your company has dealt with 600 such stories over the course of years and you've been directly involved and hands-on in making it work, you might genuinely be considered to know a few things about prison as a process, successful or not, of rehabilitation, not just punishment. Hence the fact that the appointment of James Thompson has been so widely praised. For example, Lord Ken Clarke, a former Justice Secretary for the former Conservative government, called him an inspired choice. "Prison should be for serious and dangerous offenders, and we should stop filling them up with people who are just a nuisance," he said. So Timpson has a good start. Working against him is the fact that he has a system in crisis, and even if some on the opposition benches have welcomed him, that's not going to stop the party from attacking him for daring to do the things that they didn't. Also working against him is something of a spotty track record of business leaders trying their hands at politics. A number of well-respected figures moved into Parliament and found very quickly that the skills you develop in leading a company, where you're able to take decisions and action them quickly, fell rather flat in a situation where it took a lot more consultation and a lot more patience to get things done. Time will tell, but for some this was the boldest move of the first few days of a new government, and it is in any case an interesting experiment in progress. If you've gotten this far, please hit the thumbs up button to help this brand new channel, and if you want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button and notification bell.